Each session, there are a number of bills that have been heard before but are still sure to garner media attention and public concern. This year is no different. Senator Tony Guarisco testified to a standing room only crowd as he presented once again his bill that would liberalize the penalties for possession of small amounts of marijuana. And once again, representatives of the District Attorney's Office and the State Police argued against any changes. The committee deferred final action until next week, but the issue is this week's pro-con topic. Should the penalties be lowered for the possession of small amounts of marijuana? Speaking in favor, Senator Tony Guarisco. Speaking against, Colonel Bo Garrison, Deputy Secretary of the Department of Public Safety.
I think we should reduce the penalties for small amounts of marijuana because it's humane that we do so. We have to recognize that it's basically young people who have no other criminal record whatsoever except their encounter with the substance marijuana. We know that the laws against it, no matter how stiff the penalties, do not discourage its use. We know that the laws, if we relax them, will not encourage its use. The states that have already decriminalized, so to speak, there are 11 now, show only a very, very marginal increase in the use, and they think that's just because people admitted it that did not admit it before. Our sister state, Mississippi, is a case in point, very similar to this state, except it does not have a large metropolitan area. And Mississippi's chief narcotics officer testified before our committee that it was the best thing they've ever done insofar as narcotics violations were concerned, and that they could focus their attention on the most serious violators in the so-called big hauls that came to Mississippi. There's just, I think that we just got a punitive idea that we're going to have some kind of a grudge against our children in this state, and we ought to be trying to encourage them respect for the law rather than disrespect for something that they know is not nearly as evil as society might envision it to be. And we also recognize that because the law, it was wrong, because it was against the law, to relax the penalties is not justifying evil.
Basically, I think that we're concerned with the de-emphasis that probably and most likely would occur if there were any emphasis taken away from the possession of marijuana. Louisiana is in a geographical location where the availability is probably greater than in other states. We know that there's a lot of marijuana that passes through our state, destined for bigger and better markets in the Northeast, the far west, and things of this nature. If it's de-emphasized by our own laws, could some of this marijuana stop in this state, perhaps be marketed here, rather than go the distance of higher markets, more competition perhaps? The Coast Guard is putting very, very much efforts into stopping smuggling in the Florida area. That leaves the Gulf Coast and the far northeast coast. It's much cheaper to come to the Gulf Coast, especially with our coastline being the longest and the largest in the nation. If this is coming in here, and we say that perhaps marijuana is not so bad after all, will this enable the smugglers to set up his marketing operations here? And I think this is our greatest concern, and certainly no one wants to see a kid with a record for the rest of his life because of the possession of a small amount of marijuana. But I just don't know if decriminalization is the answer. Perhaps we should, increase penalties for distribution to try to rid the state of more. We know that there are a lot of people using it, but that's one of those unfortunate things.